Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title of this video, I wanted to backtrack a little bit and do a little bit of a recap on my au pair experience 3 years later. Please don't mind my background today. I cannot find good lighting in our home. This is my makeshift background for the day. So for those of you that didn't know, I was an au pair in Spain. I have an au pair video that I will try to card on the screen here, and if not, I will link it down below so you can go watch my au pair story and learn a little bit more about why I left my host family early. I also have a playlist with au pair videos so you can go back and see kind of my experience from my first host family to my second host family, as I was an au pair for 2 different families in 2 different areas of Spain. I don't typically go into too much detail or talk about why I left the first host family I was with, just because it all around was a really difficult situation. I wasn't there any more than 3.5 weeks. I just knew that the family wasn't a good fit for me, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that the children were horribly behaved, and they also had a lot of other people in the household, like another housekeeper that was also kind of like a nanny. And yeah, it was just not a great situation. So what I've been looking back on 3 years later after leaving my second host family is somewhat due to the fact that I actually to this day continue to have a relationship with my second host family, even though I did leave them early. I would say that I did have 2 negative au pair experiences. Unfortunately, my second experience was also extremely difficult, and again, the video that explains that in a lot more detail will be either linked below or on the screen, but I thought I'd just kind of recap a few things about that experience. One thing I think about often, and I've also been asked by other people looking to become au pairs, is did I regret my experience, and do I wish that I had never been an au pair for this family? The honest answer is no, I wouldn't take my experience away. I think that I learned a lot from it about myself as a person, and also just from that entire experience I grew a lot, and I was forced to mature living abroad on my own and having to eventually make some pretty big decisions for myself. And yeah, I don't think I would ever be an au pair again, though. I've also had that question if I found another family, maybe a vegan family, because that was part of my au pair journey that was difficult. But I don't think that I would be an au pair again. I am never gonna say never, because who knows. But just looking back at my experiences, I don't know if there's anything more that I could take away from another au pair experience, even if it was a good one. At this point, I really enjoy traveling and visiting different parts of the world and kind of having the freedom to go where I want, when I want. Going back to the vegan thing, I have been 100% plant-based vegan for about 5 or 6 years now. Both of my host families knew I was vegan before I moved in with them. Typically, you have a conversation with your host family via Skype or through other messaging, and oftentimes they ask what kind of dietary needs you have or what you like to eat, so that they have food stocked in the house for you when you're there. In both of my au pair cases, even more so with my second au pair family, it ended up becoming a really sore topic where the family didn't want to kind of buy groceries outside of their normal grocery haul. They didn't want to spend money on more fruit or more vegetables when they had a very carnivorous diet. This would have been completely fine had I been able to go out and get groceries for myself. I even would have happily paid to get food for myself. But unfortunately, with my second experience, if you've seen my videos about that, you know I pretty much was with my host baby all day. I didn't have any time that was free time or my time where I could leave the home besides taking the baby to the park. and I also didn't have means to really get around. To take a bus to the nearest grocery store would have been about 45 minutes, and that was the nearest grocery store, and like I said, I didn't have time to go all the way there, do my shop, and come all the way back. And with the amount of money you make as an au pair, or at least I think majority of au pairs make, my allowance was 70 or 75 euros per week. I saved as much money as I possibly could during my time there, but you're also not making a ton to be doing a whole bunch of grocery shopping and other things. So my experience may have been easier had I been with a vegan host family, but it's also pretty rare, and depending on the place in the world you want to go, you might be a little bit more limited. That being said, about kind of the rules and stuff that ended up being in place while I was an au pair, looking back, I would say it is so important as an au pair to make sure that you have some sort of structure and a contract with the family you're working for. Especially while you're living in home with a family, it can be really difficult to kind of draw boundaries and figure out what those boundaries are. For example, I know a lot of au pairs that have a similar story to mine, where the host family gets really uncomfortable with having you in their kitchen and eating their food, even though they tell you that it's your home and you're welcome. I feel like in a contract, it would probably be a good thing to even lay out rules such as the kitchen is open to the au pair's use, and maybe something like the food in the kitchen is open for everyone in the household to consume, unless there's specified food that the host family has, like specialty items for themselves. The food thing always seems to be a really common issue for a lot of au pairs, even for au pairs that don't necessarily have different dietary needs than the family. But laying out those specifics in a contract, I think, would have helped me a lot. Probably not solved all of the problems, but in terms of me being able to have relaxing time in the family's living room, my host mom felt that that was kind of strange and wanted me to be in my room. Again, a lot of the details that I'm mentioning throughout this video are explained in a lot more depth in my other au pair video. But then the biggest one would be time off. I think that 110% needs to be written in a contract, is when you have time off, what overtime looks like if the host parents decide to ask you for extra babysitting or weekend care for the child or children. I think one of the reasons why I became so burned out was because I didn't know how to stick up for myself. I didn't know what my schedule for work was actually supposed to look like. And anytime that my host parents wanted to leave and obviously leave the baby with me, I always just said yes, because I didn't know what was expected of me, if I had time off or if I didn't. And this was the case for the entire time that I was working with them. I worked 7 days a week, pretty much the entire day. I obviously had nights where I would sleep and not have to wake up and be with the baby, but in terms of nap time, I was often in charge of that. My camera just cut out, so I kind of lost my place a little bit, but basically what I was getting at is it's so important to be able to experience the place around you where you're living and to meet other people. And not having any time off, it makes it really difficult to enjoy your time that is not 100% focused around this childcare. So yeah, one big lesson that I learned from my experience at least was drawing boundaries. A lot of people say Canadians apologize too much and are really nice. I've been told I fit that stereotype because I have a really hard time saying no to people. I don't think that this is always good. I think boundaries are really important to have. For me, it kind of became expected that I would always look after my host kid when my host parents wanted, because I never said no and I was always around. After the first month or two, they knew that if they just left the house that I would be there and be willing to take care of the host baby whenever they wanted. So I think it's really important to be strong and stand up for yourself and draw those boundaries and write them in a contract, because the contract is just going to be a nice solid piece of structure that you both can go back to and make sure you're staying within the rules. And I think that's probably my last point, just looking at my au pair experience and then also seeing a lot of other au pairs that have a similar experience. It gets very difficult when living with a host family, living in home with a family too, to not be taken advantage of. I think there are a lot of cases where au pairs feel taken advantage of. They are told they're not expected to cook or clean or work overtime and other things like this. Even language tutoring. I think there's a small part of being an au pair. There's like a basic understanding that you are bringing some of your language and culture to this family, but it's not inherently a rule that an au pair must be a tutor for a family or these children. So sometimes when you're living in home with a family and suddenly the host family or a host parent kind of starts adding extra tasks to your list, other little jobs, like I said, being more of a tutor for the children, having actual like study time, also becoming more of a housekeeper, which was also my experience with my second family. I ended up taking on a large cleaning role in that home, so much so to the point where I was actually ironing my host dad's clothes. And looking back, I think it's a little bit crazy that I was ironing the underwear of my host family, because that's not in the description of being an au pair. And again, if I had a contract, maybe I could have drawn those boundaries and made sure that yeah, I wasn't doing other jobs that I didn't need to be doing. And sometimes the honest truth is, when you're living with a family and you're a really hard worker, your host parents kind of can become lazy, and they realize that because you're such a hard worker and you're trying to please them, that they can take advantage of that. Even if it's subconsciously, I think it happens a lot of the time where suddenly they see somebody else's doing the dishes, taking out the garbage, and then changing the diaper of their baby. It spirals a little bit, and then all of a sudden, within like 4 or 5 months, you realize you've taken on these tasks almost 100% of the time. Now, this is my own experience. This, of course, could be different for everybody else. You might be a person that is wonderful at drawing boundaries and articulating your needs and your concerns. For me, this was just a really difficult thing to do, as I felt if I brought up a concern of mine with my host mom, she would get really upset at me and she would find a way to kind of turn an issue against me. And another thing is, when you are moving far away to live with people that you don't know, they can honestly be anybody. You might think from some Skype calls that they are the perfect family for you, and they might be. You honestly can have a wonderful experience, and they could be the perfect people for you to live with and work for. But you could also find yourself in a situation where, after Skyping with them for a few months and making the decision to travel and move and live in with them, you realize in real life they're different than how you expected. Sometimes you end up with really lonely people and they want you there as a friend, which I hate to break it to you, but that's not your job as an au pair. And I took on that role as well, being a little bit of a counselor and a friend, even though that meant sacrificing my time to go out and meet people and explore. I don't want to make this video to scare anybody away. I just want to share a little bit more of my experience. It is actually so crazy to me to think that I was an au pair 3 years ago. And no, my time was not all bad. I had some wonderful moments with the family, and that host baby, he has my heart forever. He was the sweetest baby. But yeah, I thought I would just do a little video kind of going over some things that I've come to realize since being an au pair. Unfortunately, I think it is the majority of au pairs' experiences that are more towards the negative side. I wish that everybody could have wonderful experiences, and if you've had a wonderful experience, please leave it down below, because I want to still keep some encouragement in this. I think that a little bit of it is luck with the family you end up au pairing for, and a little bit of it is how you prepare. Anyways, that is my video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye, guys.